Okay, so welcome to this next video in which we are discussing heterotrimeric G proteins and adenylyl cyclases. Okay, so we've now discussed how alpha subunits can regulate heterotrimeric G proteins. We've seen that the alpha S and also the alpha OLF subunit with GTP bound to it will activate absolutely every single one of the adenylyl cyclases. We've seen that the alpha I1, alpha I2, alpha I3, alpha Z, and alpha O subunits will bind to adenylyl cyclase 1, 3, and 8 and block the activation of these free adenylyl cyclases by calcium. Okay, so they block the activation of them. We've also seen that the group 3 adenylyl cyclases, adenylyl cyclase 5 and adenylyl cyclase 6, they get bound to by the G-alpha I1, G-alpha I2, G-alpha I3, G-alpha Z alpha subunits with, of course, GTP bound to them, and they are actually inhibited by those enzymes. By those proteins. They are enzymes, they're GTPases, but we'll call them proteins. Right, okay, so we've seen the involvement of many different alpha subunits in the regulation of adenylyl cyclase function. What we now want to turn our attention to is the function of the beta gamma. Whoops, nothing there. On the involvement of the beta gamma complex in regulating adenylyl cyclase function. Okay, so if you remember, the group 2 adenylyl cyclases, which contained adenylyl cyclase 2, adenylyl cyclase 4, and adenylyl cyclase 7, they were called the beta gamma stimulated adenylyl cyclases. So adenylyl cyclase 2, 4, and 7. Okay, so these are actually going to be stimulated by beta gamma complexes. So let me show a beta gamma complex here. Okay, so here we have our beta gamma complex. Remember, the gamma subunit has this prenyl group which anchors it in the inner leaflet of the phospholipid bilayer, and the beta subunit always remains bound to the gamma subunit. Okay, and therefore the whole complex remains on the inner leaflet of the phospholipid bilayer. Okay, now basically what happens is the beta gamma complex combines to these adenylyl cyclases, adenylyl cyclase 2, 4, and 7, and it itself cannot activate them, not on its own. However, it can potentiate the activation of these adenylyl cyclases when they have been activated by alpha S. Okay, so if you have this adenylyl cyclase 2, 4, and 7, and it's already been activated by G-alpha S or G-alpha OLF, then the binding of the beta gamma subunit can potentiate the activation by a great factor, basically. It's a very, very powerful potentiator, but on its own, it's not capable of activating the adenylyl cyclase. Okay, so it needs the G-alpha S subunit or the G-alpha OLF subunit to have already bound, and then if it binds in addition to that G-alpha S or G-alpha OLF subunit, then that will trigger further activation of the adenylyl cyclase. Okay, so let's have a go at drawing this. So, basically, let's start with the adenylyl cyclase, and we'll have it already in the active state. Okay, so here's whoops, what's happened there? Oh, no, I have one more alpha helix. Okay, so there's the transmembrane domain 1, then here we have transmembrane domain 2, then, whoops, I need to make sure that the C2A is close by the C1A. Okay, and here's the carboxylic acid terminus, and here's the amino group here. Okay, so we've got C1A here dimerized with C2A, and basically the reason for that is that we also have this G-alpha S or G-alpha OLF subunit that's bound to both the C1 and the C2 domains. Okay, so I will show that. How can I show this? I'll just sort of show it in the middle here. Okay, so it'll be a bit of a cramped drawing. Okay, and it's still got its lipid group anchoring it in the membrane. Okay, so everything's getting a little crowded in here, but the principle I hope I'm getting across. Okay, so here is either the G alpha S or the G alpha olf subunit here. So this is G alpha S / G alpha olf, one of the two. Okay, and basically now what's going to come along is the beta gamma subunit. Okay, so the adenylyl cyclase is already active. Okay, but if the beta gamma subunit comes and binds now, it will potentiate this activation, so it will mean that this enzyme is activated even further and will produce much more cyclic AMP basically. Okay, and this is the case for adenylyl cyclase 2, adenylyl cyclase 4, and adenylyl cyclase 7. Okay, on the other hand, the beta-gamma subunits can also inhibit adenylyl cyclases. Specifically, they bind to and inhibit group 1 adenylyl cyclases. Okay, so remember the calcium-activated adenylyl cyclases. Adenylyl cyclase 1, adenylyl cyclase 3, and adenylyl cyclase 8. Basically, the beta-gamma subunit will bind to these adenylyl cyclases and inactivate them. Okay, so they'll inhibit them from forming the active state where they are producing cyclic AMP. Okay, so again, here is our adenylyl cyclase, and whilst it's got the beta-gamma subunit bound to it, it's not going to activate basically. This is now inhibiting it. Okay, and this is for adenylyl cyclase 1, 3, and 8. So basically, the beta-gamma subunit can have differing functions. Okay, and you'll notice here that I'm not being specific. I'm not telling you exactly which beta-gamma subunit we're talking about here, because those sort of details haven't yet been figured out. Okay, at the moment we're just talking about a general beta-gamma subunit. This seems to occur no matter which beta subunit you have and which gamma subunit you have. It seems to be a general property of them. Whether it will remain that way in years to come, of course, is up for debate, and it probably won't. Okay, but at the moment, what we know is that the general beta-gamma subunit seems to activate adenylyl cyclase 2, 4, and 7 as long as they've already been activated by G-alpha S, so it potentiates their activation, and also inhibits the group 1 adenylyl cyclases, adenylyl cyclase 1, 3, and 8. Okay, so that now concludes our discussion of the regulation of cyclase function by heterotrimeric G proteins.